Welcome back to another powerful episode of The Right Stuff, where we dive into real-life stories of resilience, preparedness, and the life-saving power of first aid. Today, I have the absolute honor of welcoming a very special guest, Yvon Calixte. Yvon and I first met in the aftermath of the devastating 2010 Haiti earthquake, where he, and along with several others, served as interpreters for our team of doctors and nurses. We were part of a medical mission to Haiti. We joined a group called Heart to Heart, and we were stepping into a crisis unlike anything we'd ever seen before. Amid the chaos, destruction, and overwhelming need, Yvon was not only a bridge between languages, he became a bridge between despair and hope, between loss and resilience. This conversation is packed with powerful moments, stories of survival, of overcoming unimaginable, and of finding light even in the darkest moments. But beyond that, Yvon's journey will challenge you to see preparedness differently, not just as something physical, but as a mindset, a way of life. Today, we'll talk about how those experiences shaped his approach to first aid, survival, and mental readiness, not just for disasters, but for everyday life. Get ready for an inspiring, eye-opening discussion. Let's dive in. Yvon, thank you for joining us. Can you start by giving our listeners a quick introduction about who you are and where you were during the earthquake?
Sure, definitely. It's a pleasure for me to be here, Lisa. I haven't seen you for a while. We haven't talked for a very long time. So it's a pleasure for me to be here today.
I'm honored.
Who am I? It's a great question. It's a big question. Probably loaded question. I'll see if I can give the concise, precise answer in regards to this question. I was born, raised, and educated in Haiti. I am married with my wonderful wife. Her name is Michaela. We've been married for a little bit over 12 years now. We have been blessed with 3 children, 5, 3, and 1. So I live in Florida, where I currently working in the green industry for quite some time now. I am a manager for East Coast facilities where I manage the daily production staff. I manage payroll, I manage fleet, etc. This company is one of the largest self-performing providers of industrial snow removal in America. And it is the largest minority-owned company in this space. The people that are watching or listening can connect with us via linking, just to have a glimpse of idea of what we do and where we are heading. Now, when it comes to the second aspect of the question, where I was during the earthquake. Okay, let me breathe.
Take your time. I know that this is going to bring back a lot really fast, so I get it.
January 12, 2010. It's really a day that I will never forget. A day of, I would say, essentially pretty bad memories. I was in my house at the time, and when the shaking started, luckily, or thanks God, our house was intact. We didn't have any issue. But at that moment, when it happened, I don't know if you're familiar with churches that has no instruments, no music, and then everybody's talking or singing at once. This is what we call a cappella. You could hear the whole capital. You could hear the whole neighborhood. Everybody at once yelling, crying, running, noise, boom, blow, black. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. So for me, I lost lots of family members. I lost close friends. I lost neighbors. I lost church family. It was a very tragic event, to say the least.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's hard for our listeners, if you haven't been through this, to really get your head wrapped around the devastation.
Definitely. It was really tough. It was really tough. Every now and then, with the aftershock and stuff, so you have a sense like, fear was covering the whole country at the time, and it was dark all over the place, people yelling, people trying to get access, people running, it was noisy, about no electricity. It was tough. It was really tough.
Right.
It was really tough.
So let's go through that first initial hour, and then we'll work our way out. I know that there's a lot of shock that sits in. There's panic. You're worried about family members. You're trying to find people. There's probably people out on the street that are injured that you want to help. But I think in that state of mind, you're probably focused on making sure everybody's okay. In relation to the injuries that you saw and the circumstances taking place, how is your brain functioning at this point? I mean, what are you thinking?
You couldn't think much. You couldn't think much. I think it was more emotional, all the reactions and actions that were occurring at the time. There was not much that you can think of as far as, okay, what can I do? What is possible? What is not possible? So we were pretty much, everybody was on mode of reacting to what happened. And know it was coming. It was all of a sudden, my thought process is, okay, where are my family? Is everybody okay? Okay, before I go out, I'm like, okay, checking on mommy. I had my siblings in there. I'm like, are you guys okay? Is everybody okay? Some of us, we got some furniture that fell off, and then some got little scratches inside my house. But we didn't know the extent of that situation. We didn't know the magnitude of it. Once we get out of the house, that's when we like, oh my God, that is not true. That is unreal. Am I dreaming? The thought process by seeing the outside, devastation and buildings crumbles and seeing people running everywhere, and then starting to see people with, broken heads, broken legs, blood all over. You're like, oh my God, what is going on? And even then, myself, I didn't know anything. I know the word earthquake, but I didn't know anything about earthquake. I've never experienced that thing before.
Oh my word. I didn't even think about that, because we prepare for that every day here in Utah.
So we've learned it. I go to school, I learn what is earthquake is all about. But I mean, living it in that moment, I didn't even think that it was an earthquake. To me, it was like, what is that? Everybody had questions. What is that? Was that a bomb? Was that something else? So we didn't even think about that's an earthquake. That's just, just to tell you that I don't think that I was the only one not to think outside of the box. What is it? Is it an earthquake? Because we don't know.
Right. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, absolutely. So what was your mission at that point? I mean, imagine, like, where do I go? What do I do? What's my role? Like when things started to settle just a little bit.
So no, one thing that I can tell you honestly, I know when I first get out of my house, that's when I'm like, okay, this is going to be tough. And I know prior to that, we didn't have a lot of access to food, to water, even with, people with good environment, sleeping inside their homes or not. So we didn't have that much stuff before the earthquake. So right after that, my mind started thinking, I'm like, okay, so are people going to be afraid to sleep outside? Where do people going to go to bed? Is it possible that we all going to be outside for a very long time? And that was the case, because people were afraid to sleep inside their homes after that. Most of the population were sleeping in tents and in the streets. So we couldn't go back inside to get nothing. We had to use what we have to cook outside on whatever was available at the time. So to me, it was like a family reunion. You see people out there. I mean, you start talking to that person, it's like, okay, what can I do for you? Do you need some help? People that you met the very first time, and you don't know their names, you don't know where they're from, but that alone didn't matter, because you wanted to help your neighbor. The common denominator was conversation. People are talking. What's going on? This is news to me. This is new. What is that? People started to ask, but you didn't have really any intent to go any further than where you live, because no action plan. You don't know outside, because at the time, cables were down, no electricity, cell phone were down. You kind of, everybody was in shock motion, Right. So as far as making a plan, nobody could not have put one.
There was probably no way to organize, communicate.
No.
No. So in relation to like injuries, I would imagine how would you even get to a hospital? If you had a broken arm or, a smashed foot or whatever was going on, what did you notice the injured people trying to handle those emergencies with what they had?
Elisa, I mean, I know you came a few weeks after that, but right after it happened, the same day, the following day, the first week, the second week, even the very first day, we're already filled with sick people, injured people. And depending on where you live, and even if you have the most powerful army on your side, there was no way that you could get access to an hospital. There was no way, all the roads were blocked. from falling buildings, from garbage, from debris and stuff. So even if you manage to get to one of those hospitals, there were no room available, and people were very creative at the time, trying to use what they have available to make sure that they can assist, they can help. It was really tough because what I've seen in that time was I've seen people using wheelbarrow because they didn't have any car. Wow. They couldn't get access to some of those little tiny room in the streets. So people using wheelbarrow, and then they carry people, put people inside a wheelbarrow, and then they're using the wheelbarrow then to try to get that person to a safer place or a place that they can get care. But sadly enough, put aside all the creativity, all the actions put in place, the tools that they use at their disposal at the time, they tried their best effort, to make sure that their neighbor get access to some kind of care, some sort of care. That was the reality, though.
So here with the Right Stuff, we work really tirelessly to encourage people to have first aid kits, start with basic supplies, gauze, bandages. And I think a lot of people feel comfortable or have a false sense of security at that point and don't take it to the next level. If you were to give people advice, if this were to happen here, what type of things would you encourage people to have in their first aid kits? From the immediate to long term, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks, a month.
It's my friend. Listen, no question. I have no doubt in my mind. If you are making a list of emergency and then you don't have a first aid kit, you missed out. Hear me well. You can have, I don't know, it's USA for sure, but if you don't have a first aid kit, you missed out. A bag of good standard first aid kit will do you well. It doesn't matter if it's storm, if it's accident related, or if it's hurricane. It doesn't matter. When it comes to issues, emergencies, you need a standard first aid kit. No question about it. And that's why I think that Right Stuff, when I heard the name, when I read that, and I'm like, that's a cliche name. That's very interesting. Right. Yeah. And then talking about,
the Right Stuff.
Yeah, the Right Stuff.
Yeah, it's important to me that people get educated about the supplies that they're putting in their kits, because they'll go on Amazon or wherever, Temu, buy these first aid kits for $40-$50. And what they get back, I had it somewhere around here. It's like these little pair of little makeup scissors or plastic little tweezers, or, a roll of what they think is sterile gauze, but it's not. And it's thin and this long. And if you had a kit like that, compared to the injuries that you saw there, in my mind, that's almost laughable. It's like you would open that kit and go, are you kidding me? Because what kind of supplies did you guys need at that time?
That's a great question, Elisa. That's a great question. So, one thing that caught my attention at the time is, especially when the sun goes down at night, no light, no first aid kit, the aftershocks were frequent. There were suddenly almost 20-25 minutes, one after one, back to back. And before you know it, buildings that were cracked would fall down, and another person would get injured, or another person would die, in addition to the millions that were already dead. So no equipment available to appease some of those injuries. I said to myself, well, if only we had. And then I couldn't complete the sentence. I couldn't finish the sentence because I already know the answers. No words to explain that. It was phenomenal. The means of sorrow, the means of pain and all the injuries. People use, bed sheets to wrap some of those, runs and injuries, areas that were caught with, maybe a building that collapsed on the back, but broken legs, broken arms. They use, door frame, they use rope to help secure or stabilize some of those broken arms, broken legs. They use anything at their disposal, but at the time, we didn't have much access, to be honest, with any first aid kit. And that's why I think it's critical for people that are listening or watching to know that how important it is. Even if you are your house, even if you are in your personal car, your work car, you need one of those kits. And that's where I think, coming down to that, Elisa, the Right Stuff, not just to have a first aid kit, to have first aid kit, but you want to have the right stuff inside that first aid kit. And that's where I think Right Stuff is critical to have.
Well, thank you very much. That's what we're working hard. And those are things like we purposely put flashlights in our kits. We purposely put trauma scissors that will work, things that will get you out of a bind in a bad situation, more so than a little pair of makeup scissors.
Definitely.
I have issues with those scissors.
Like when I open some of them, because I use them even at work, I use some of them from Amazon, and I'm like, okay, well, look at that little scissor. You can't even put your fingers inside of them. You're like, what is that going to do? I mean, and there are some of those bandages, little tiny thing. You're like, I mean, if you get a big cut, what is that little bandage is going to sell you for?
Yeah, I know. So I think, the first aid kits need to be put together purposefully and educated and with intention, knowing your circumstances. What you prepare for in Florida, where you're at, versus what I'm preparing for in Utah could be two completely different types of emergencies. You're probably dealing more with flooding or, whatever catastrophes typically hit you guys, where ours is the main concern is the earthquake.
Definitely.
But we haven't had one. I don't even know when the last one was or if there has been, but they say Utah is due for this big catastrophic earthquake. And I think that people just get lackadaisical and comfortable and think, somebody will take care of me or there'll be a hospital, and so many times I've been involved in hospital drills, with the communities to simulate these types of drills where there's mass casualties. And I can honestly tell you that if the roads are down like they were in Haiti from debris, there would be no way to resupply these hospitals. They would run out of supplies quickly. They would be hard pressed to get staff to stay or come, to travel 20 miles to work if you can't use a car. There's going to be chaos and confusion. It's going to take time to set up. And I think that they'll focus on kids and schools and things like that. And people who have broken arms that you would normally go to the hospital and get fixed in 3 hours, it's going to be a very delayed, long process, if not days, if not weeks. And if I could just impart that type of thinking to people, and not to be an alarmist, but to be proactive and to think ahead. Because I think here in America, we are blessed and we all do come together when there's an emergency, just like the hurricanes that you guys go through. Yeah. People will come in, they'll help, they want to be there. But there's something about being self-sufficient and prepared so that you don't have that window where there's opportunities for infection. I remember being in the clinic and people were still suffering from wounds from the initial injuries, something that they would have put a Band-Aid on, cleaned it up and been done. Now they're getting sepsis and infections and if not dying from some of these things.
Definitely. I mean, one of the things I know, talking about injuries due to a lack of not having enough supplies, basic first aid supplies. It's critical because in Haiti, when after the earthquake, after the aftermath, so we know first and that, people that got injured and they didn't have access to hospital, to none of those basic first aid supplies or proper care, a lot of, infectious disease started to develop, like malaria, like dengue fever, it was a tough experience though, because when I recall some of those people, they came in, they're like, they're like with chills because they have a cut and no medicine, nothing, somebody just, wrap around, about maybe the t-shirts, something just to wrap the leg and wrap the arm. And then this goes on for a day, 2 days, a week without seeing a doctor, no pill, no painkiller, nothing to help ease that pain. And that person started to develop what we call dengue fever. They started to develop, dizziness because, dehydration, those kind of things. And the recovery process in Haiti was very long. Like I said, because most of the roads were blocked, because most of the hospital, they were not equipped enough for those kind of things. People that were injured, some of them, they were injured and the injury leads them to death because they didn't get access to proper care or hospital. And I think like you said, again, not just to repeat it, just for the sake of repeating it, but it's a fact. In US, people are blessed. People are just blessed. Yes. And sometimes they don't really care. Sometimes they don't really know. And I think the fact that a friend of mine likes to say, you don't know what you don't know until you.
Yeah, that's so true. That is what we live by here. It's so true. And I think that's why talks like this are so important, to bring that awareness to people. And because I think people want to do the right thing. They want to be prepared and they might just feel overwhelmed and not know where to start. But starting is a good starting point, to do anything, do something,
Yeah.
Even if it's a little pair of scissors.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. And I appreciate what you mentioned about the progression of some of these injuries. And it wasn't just injuries. And this is something that I've thought a lot about. And I've even created special kits because of this very thing.
Wow.
Is we saw a lot, we saw a lot of malaria. We saw dengue. We saw vaginal infections like crazy.
Yeah.
We saw yeast infections, like lots of rashes and yeast and things that we typically don't have to deal with on a daily basis. But because of the living conditions, lack of water, lack of nutrition, lack of, just living in a clean, dry environment, all of these things started popping up. So in some of these kits that I've thought of, I've done like a female kit that has everything you would need if you got a yeast infection or you got this or you got that, just the things that are uncomfortable and annoying that can turn into something just miserable.
It is very interesting that you come up with something like that, because I remember back 2010 when I used to translate, for some of you and some of the nurses and doctors that were there at the time. And I know every now and then, if we have a situation like that, the female will feel like, I've got something down here, and they're like, they don't want to talk. You're like, okay, so it's gotta be a yeast infection. It's gotta be, it's gotta be connected to something of some sort of stuff, and you're like, oh, what do you have, Evelyn? And I know at the time, because we were fortunate enough to have had to come down and help out, we did have some supplies available, but not enough, enough. Because the idea of helping out after a tragedy like that was to clean, and clean some cuts and help out with broken legs, broken arms, but not deep down, when it comes to yeast infection. And I think it's a good thing. If you come up with something like that, I think this is going to go a long way. I
know. I mean, I have a lice kit because people aren't used to dealing with lice, and things like that are going to pop up, right?
Yeah.
So, I was profoundly impacted by just going back, and I don't know that our listeners really want to hear about pelvic infections or yeast infections per se, but this is really important to talk about because I learned something, and I think it was probably towards the very end, if not the last day we were there. And it was just boggling my mind why all these women were having these issues. And I don't remember if it was you or somebody or Taylor, somebody told me that in short, it was probably from like a botched self-abortion, if you will. I don't know how to say that correctly, whether it's somebody else or yourself, because there are so many pregnancies now coming up. They had nothing, no protection. And that seemed to be frequent. Did you find that down there? I mean, I didn't inquire about that any further, but I was just really taken back by that.
That's true. That's true. Because at the time, I mean, and that's the thing though about this tragedy. Even when people were dealing with pain, like I said, in the midst of sorrow and pain and this crucial atmosphere environment, but people still had emotions. People
absolutely.
So you can take that away, and people still had emotions. They still had desires, and some of them they didn't need to go back inside to do their thing, so they had to do it. But the thing is the aftermath of this. Typically as a woman, that. So you wanna clean yourself. You wanna have the hygienic stuff to help clean yourself, but they didn't have none. They have none, and that's one part of the story. The other part of it is some of them they were forced to, they were forced because they were not inside the home, and then maybe one or two people or men they saw them and then they take advantage of them, and then they end up pregnant. So, but it was their choice. It was against their will, because their will. They didn't want people to know. They didn't want their family to. They didn't want that their parents to know. They had to make a choice. And the choice was for some of them to get rid of that pregnancy. And in doing so, the end result is infections, yeast infection, those kind of stuff. And because they didn't have at their disposal any first aid kit, and then things got worse,
Yes. Yeah, it was absolutely heartbreaking to know that these women had those types of choices they had to make. We can't even fathom, having to be in conditions like that. Let alone the situation of, being forced upon you, against your will, for sure.
Yeah, but that was part of even with the earthquake, even with the shaking and the building collapsing and stuff. Yeah, that was part of this tragedy as well.
Yes, terribly unfortunate. which leads me kind of to this next topic. As I went through my experience there, I was reading through my journal, and I went with an intention, and I just want to read this little part. I hope to find an understanding of the disparity of living conditions between the U.S. and Haiti. I hope to come home wiser, more appreciative, well-balanced, and proactive. So much to learn. And if I skipped to the very end, we'll work our way there, but there was so much more that I came home with. So much more appreciation for what we have. So much profound respect for what the Haitians were going through and what they had to experience. It's a life-changing experience. And I remember one day it was hot every day. I couldn't sleep. I was sweating. I didn't even know whether to take a shower or not to take a shower. I was going to end up soaking wet. The bandana, none of that even worked. So, and there was this day we showed up, I think we rolled up around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning or something, 7. And coming from this big Nazarene chapel where we were at, it was one of the very minimal standing buildings left. Yes. And you were a pastor of this, right? Yes. Of this congregation.
That's correct.
And people had been lining up for hours prior to our arrival to get a turn. When I walked in, as I was walking in, I heard this beautiful music. And I think the song was, Did You Think to Pray? I think, if I remember correctly, but it was a hymn that I was familiar with. And the people were all well-dressed, organized, their heads were held up, and this sound was just flowing from these cinder block walls. It was beautiful. It was so heart-wrenching to know these people were in these circumstances, and still they had dignity. They still believed in God. They still sing praises to God. One thing that we're not used to doing here in America is praying anymore in school or in public. Yeah. And when we came into that chapel, there was all of you interpreters. There was all these male interpreters. There was the doctors, the nurses, student nurses. And just like clockwork, like it was just not even missing a beat. Everyone held hands in a circle and prayed, sang a song. And there was one time when all the males sang a song. I think that was the last day. I can't stop bawling from that. Tell me more about that side of things.
It's I think there's something special about Haitians in general. I'm not saying that to brag about myself or any Haitians whatsoever, but it's a reality.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is a small country in size, but really has a big heart. Haiti is full of people that are very resilient people.
Yes. Absolutely.
They're not afraid to take risk, and they'll rise up to any occasions that occur. Talking about the earthquake, talking about malaria syndromes, talking about all the diarrhea situations that we've encountered after that or prior to that. So, but I do believe that there's a sense that developed in the Asian culture. We have a saying in our culture that says that when it seems darker, that's when light will shine. When things looks the worst, and that's where our hope is leaning to. So, and I think one will never really fully prepared for emergencies, but you can at least have the basics available. Ever since then, I became more aware of my surroundings more than ever. I am personally become a very sensitive person. When I hear noise, I kind of like, okay, what's going on?
Yeah.
Exactly. So I became someone that is very proactive in checking stuff around me, especially with having kids. I want to make sure that, okay, is this secure? Is this tight enough? Is the seatbelt, connected, attached the way it should? I become very sensitive, for everything that is surrounding. And I am a firm believer that accident can be prevented,
Yes.
And if you always do the right thing, it might take more time. It can be a little bit more uncomfortable. But in the end, safety, it's no accident.
Thank you for saying that. I couldn't have said it any better.
So safety is no accident.
I'm using that.
Yeah. So I do believe that there are a lot of things that could have been prevented if you had the right staff. If people at least take the time to assess the situation, to look around, or maybe ask questions. Okay, what do you have? What is happening? Do you have this? Do you have that? So certain basic knowledge about safety and first aid kit, or PPE for that matter, because that stands for personal protective equipment. So all those kind of stuff I do believe that in our culture, we are lacking in general. People are lacking of basic training, basic information in regards to safety. And that's why most of the time leads to injury, leads most of the time to, even death.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings me back to this little baby that we cared for. I think the infant was maybe, 8 months old. I can't remember, 10 months, but just a little teeny thing. Yeah. And I think for a couple of days, he had a fever of 105, and it was 105 degrees outside and 99% humidity. And he had profuse diarrhea. It was not stopping. Sure. We tried for a couple hours to orally rehydrate him. We tried everything. We tried IVs in the neck, everywhere. Couldn't establish anything. And so here I am in a clinic from America with doctors and nurses around me, feeling more helpless than I've ever felt in my entire life. So we were able to find a taxi or whatever, whatever they're called.
We did use one of our tap though to take.
Yeah. Our story, how we got home, is a whole nother adventure. That was scary. Oh my gosh. Whoa, wow. So we knew that there was a tent hospital or a children's hospital that was left, and we went down there to try to get more advanced care for this baby. And as we walked, my eyes were just blown away by what the conditions were there. But I was focused on this mission of getting this baby to a hospital. And when we finally found a place, we walked in and they greeted us at the door and they said, "We're packing up, we're leaving. Our time here is done." I said, "What about this baby?" And I got this look like, I'm like, "No, we're doing something. No one's leaving this place until we figure this out." They took the baby in and they were so skilled. They got an IV, in his neck, and the IV was started. Their little mom, his mom, was so in shock. She showed up. She had no money. And I think you took care of her. I think I saw you slip her some money. That was very kind, touching. And we walked away never knowing the outcome of that situation, whether it made a difference or not. I think it made a difference to us, right?
Yes, definitely.
But I remember you asking me, "Hey, let me show you something." And you took me down a ways to literally a tent hospital. It was filled with cribs, flies, dying people, children with mothers who hadn't slept in it looked like weeks, praying over their children. And ironically, there was no healthcare workers. I couldn't find any nurses. There was maybe just a couple doctors there who seemed to be just swamped. And then we ran into people that we had referred from the clinic to go to the hospital to get more help, who hadn't even been talked to yet. They were getting pinged back to us. And, how horrible is that? I mean, tell me a little bit more about these tent hospitals and what was going on there.
This situation developed more so after the earthquake. Hospital. I mean, not that we have good hospital, but the buildings, the edifice, they were not in tents. Most of those tents, clinic, they started to develop after the earthquake. Now, one thing that I recall, so in that story, and I even forgot that you were part of that team though, because I think it was probably Diane. It was 3 nurses though in that. I don't remember all the names, but since you come back with that story, I'm pretty sure that you were part of it. Though, that story alone, I remember I was translating. I walked into, it was the general hospital. We walked into, and then there were different sections, different areas outside the parking lot where they stage some tents so that they can assist people, because inside we're already full, we're already packed. So, but that story alone stick with me. The reason why is because I've tempted not to translate what they were telling me. I've tempted not to tell you. I've tempted not to tell Diane and all the other nurses that were there, because that was the reality. And I think at first they asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Okay, we brought." There were 2 other people, I believe, one with the swollen arms. I don't know if you will call that gentleman with the swollen arms with as an abscess or something that needs urgent care. So as I was translating, and they were telling me that, well, there's no way we will accept this person. I'm like, you guys have no idea what's going on. I've got this note that says, and the doctors are with me. The nurses are behind me, right behind me. The note says that they need to get access today, like right now. And you guys are telling me that go away.
Yeah.
So I'm like, my mouth, I'm mumbling, because what do I tell Elisa that is behind me? What do I tell the other nurses that is behind me? Go away? While they have experience, they are trained, they know that these kind of situations, they need assistance right away. And you're telling me that, go back, find someplace else. And when we walk around, and then I think we made first stop, second stop, and then the third stop, they were telling me that the same thing. I'm like, okay, I can't keep running in circle. I got to translate that to you guys. And when I seen that, and then I think Diane started to cry, and then you guys were all, emotions. It was surreal. The reality is, in this circumstance, found out that, okay, what can we do to better help? What can we do to better assist? What do you guys need? Because you guys, you paid, airplane fares, you pay to stay at, house, you bring your own food, you have to use your own money just to be able to serve. That was a special mission. And for us, that are in a position to receive from you for free, and then we kind of like, okay, we don't want that, we want that, we don't want that, we want that, especially when it comes to, healthcare. Right. And I do hope, that's my hope. And I know things are worse right now. They're getting worse. Yes. My hope is that at some point in time that this country will have the healthcare that they need. That's my hope. That they have, a healthcare system that when people need help, it doesn't matter how much money, your revenue, how much money you're making, your revenue, your earned income, doesn't matter what color you are. So we all can get, proper care when needed. And that's my hope. That's my hope.
So well said. No mother should have to sit there and watch their baby die in front of them from diarrhea. No. That will stay with me forever, that image. And I almost wish I could just show it to the world, just not for shock factor, but look, this is real. This is what's going on around us,
Yes.
And it's important to me to think of others like our brothers and sisters. Yeah. And I didn't think like that before I came to Haiti, but I definitely thought that when I left. I knew I was leaving my brothers and sisters from Haiti, I just felt connected.
Yeah.
And the way you treated each other, the way you responded to these emergencies, the way you depended on God for hope was powerful. And I remember I'm slow to anger for the most part for me. And I remember landing, I think I was in New York, we were in customs, I had to go to the bathroom, and we had just gone to these orphanages the flies on the bait, you know what I mean? It was just, a bag of rice was $50. It was expensive. And we were giving everything we could to try to help, but there was never just enough. But I remember going into this bathroom, and there was two ladies in there who looked like they just disembarked from a cruise of some kind. They had their tennis skirts on, all their jewelry, and there was like 2 stalls in the bathroom, and they're like, oh my God, there's only 2 stalls. And and they were complaining. As I'm sitting there counting, that necklace is worth $3,000, that ring's worth $100, that's, whatever, I'm adding up how many bags of rice this jewelry could buy. I went from 0 to 10 on these women in the bathroom because they were complaining about only 2 stalls. And I just saw people crapping in the gutters with no privacy, with no way to wipe themselves. And that was a constant occurrence. Yeah. So the disparity was huge, and coming back was more of a culture shock than going there.
That is huge though. That is huge. I mean, for someone who is from Haiti and is currently living in Florida, I mean, I know the difference, I know the difference.
Yes.
I mean, talking about, hurricane season in Florida, talking about when there's a storm coming, talking about the tornado of those kind of stuff, you better be prepared in advance. And the good thing about it, if you're in the US, you've got the announcement, you've got, the weather channels that are telling you, what to do, what not to do, be prepared, go to this store, go to that side, evacuations and all those kind of stuff. So you prepare for it in advance. It's a different ball game when you are in Haiti. Some people still, up to this point, they don't have any TV. Up to this point, they're using candles. Up to this point, they're using, all kind of lamps with gas, and you're looking at some people in the US, they're like, oh, I'm too hot because the AC is still working, but it's not working the way they want it.
I know.
I don't like this light. It's too yellow, but you do have light, but you just don't like it because it's yellow. You want what that is more, white and those kind of stuff. And I always shake my head and I'm like, it's God has to be God, to create us the way we are, because sometimes I'm like, I wish some people would be able to go to at least to Haiti, not the way it is right now, just to have a different perspective in life, just to, have a better sense of human beings, what you are fortunate, about. And for right now, and I think a lot of people, they take their lives for granted. They take what they have for granted. You have fridge, you take it for granted. You have shoes, you take it for granted. And honestly, I take nothing for granted. Nothing.
I believe
You know, I take nothing for granted, especially where I come from. And I know right now there are people that are texting me. There are people that are calling me right now. They're asking for help. But my hands are, you know, I'm stretching thin. You know, I can't go all over the place. I don't have money to help the whole country. But I wish I could.
Oh, we all do. We would in a heartbeat.
I wish I could. And that's one of the things I think leaving the US give me a better sense of purpose. You know, I have to work harder. You know, I have to treat people with respect. I have to treat people with fairness. Back in my country, you're in lines, people coming behind you, they want to come up front, okay? Because they probably have a connection, because maybe they have money. In the US, it's a different ballgame. Not that there are no disparity whatsoever. There's still always some, you know, doesn't matter because we are all human beings. But difference is huge. You know, the healthcare system, the disparity is huge. The treatment between a doctor and a nurse and you know, just because I live in that bracket and you live in that zip code area, you know, all those disparity, they are real in the US as well, but not as great as they are in the
Right.
That's a good thing that you've learned firsthand how resilient the Haitian people are. And when you come back into the US, you're like, okay, I can compare and contrast because that's human nature.
Yes. Which I'm so glad you brought this up, because you can prepare physically all day long. You can have the apocalypse of all apocalypse zombie first aid kits, but mentally there's no way to prepare for what you're going to see. You're seeing normal erased. You're seeing so much abnormal, like body shouldn't be in this position. That does, I mean, your brain can't even process this. And you can't imagine how you're going to feel a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 20 years, 15, whatever, however long it's been. The PTSD has got to be real. The mental, is there any way you can prepare yourself mentally, or you could give people advice on what to think about in advance of a major catastrophe that would help them through it, or give them some sense of hope?
I believe in God. You know, I think the first aspect would be to do what you can. We always need to do what we can. And then what we cannot do, we let God take charge of it. Now, for people that lives either in the US, I mean, in Europe, in Haiti, in Africa, for people that live all over the world, their reality is different. But one thing that is important is to keep in mind that this world has a higher power. There is somebody that is controlling everything. And then when we can't go somewhere, when we can't stretch enough, when we can't reach enough, somebody else can. You know, somebody else can. And we always need to keep in mind that whatever we cannot do, somebody else can do it. You know, and I do believe that if we surround ourselves with good people, if we keep on believing on God's help, I don't think there's anything that is impossible. Everything is possible as long as we believe in God's power.
I believe it. I believe your mental positive thinking and focusing on the good and appreciating the good is powerful. I mean, it will pull you through the darkest times. I remember preparing to come down for this. I think I said earlier it was a couple of weeks that we came down, but I think it was more like 6 months. It was in June. And it took us a minute to get all of our ducks in a row, to do the fundraising, organize. We brought in, 10 big black duffel bags of medications. We had to really try to think, what are we going to see down there? What is going to happen? What supplies do they think they need? And like you mentioned before, you guys were utilizing everything. Nothing was really getting thrown away. We were making splints out of cardboard boxes. We were reusing everything down there. Nothing got thrown away. But I think that when people come together with a common purpose and their intent is to help their neighbor, and they can think of their neighbor as a human, I'm guilty. Like, I don't know who my neighbor is 30 houses down the street. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's crazy, to make an effort to get to know people so that when something happens, they'll be the ones to have your back and you'll have their back. And that's the whole point of all of this is don't be afraid to step up. Don't be afraid to say, what can I do? Even if you don't know any first aid or if you don't know anything about the situation, just being present. What can I do?
Definitely.
That is huge.
Definitely. And I think I would add a little, because I know a lot of people, they're probably not aware of that. Once you're conscious of okay, what is important in life? And then at the top of your list, and then you add, okay, for any emergency situation, you want to have at your disposal a first aid kit. Now, there are plenty out there. There are plenty out there. Some of them are standard, some of them are not. Some of them is just the name first aid kit. But looking inside the box, you're like, what is it? What am I going to do with this? You know,
Yes.
If you can afford one, make sure that your neighbor has one. Make sure that your friend has one. If you go to your church, make sure that your church has one. And then spread the word. I think the right stuff inside a right good, box of first aid kit matters. And that's why right stuff is all about.
Exactly. And I can honestly say that my purpose in starting this just started with, these kits online are not good. Like, I could put one together better than that. And so I did. And then I'm like, why are people paying $200 for a bag when you can put it in a $10 little bag and spend all your money more on supplies? So then I started building this kit, and I'm like, well, bikers need one, and these people need one, and boaters and hunters.
Landscapers, everybody did it.
And so now I've gotten to the point where I'm like, these construction workers, they need them in their cars because OSHA requires them to have it on site. But how many people stay on site? They're scattered all over, right? Going out to jobs. And they're at the highest risk of getting injuries. They're at the highest risk of long-term disabilities or death. Yeah. The statistics are staggering in that way. So my current mission right now is to go into different businesses like contractors to identify what their needs are and specifically arm them with the tools and resources they need. I will not sell a tourniquet or a first aid kit without a tourniquet. It's just too critical of a simple, easy, life-saving. There's no reason not to have one.
I agree. I agree.
So that's kind of where we're at here with the right stuff. Is the first aid kit? It was meant to be a tool to get into people's hands, but I'm seeing the bigger picture, and I think the education and the awareness has got to come first. And so true. I am working hard to try to get that message out there through different mediums, different speaking, different social medias, whatever it takes to let people understand what you went through and what the potential is. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Right?
Definitely. I mean, but I do believe at one point, I mean, I don't know all, I mean, as far as everything that is inside the packages, but one thing that I think that I would hope for, I'm not saying that's had to be inside the right stuff, first aid kit, but every now and then you have people that has diarrhea on the fields. I mean,
I am prepared with that. Trust me, that is in my head.
My hope is, because there'll be time my guys, they'll call me, they're like, hey, Bob, I can't wait. I got to go home. I'm like, okay. So I got to run stuff, even though they have a first aid kit with them, but that doesn't help them to stay at the job because they have this, diarrhea.
Yeah, this issue. Yeah, I mean, then that leads to dehydration, right? And that leads to time off work, and that leads to delays in your jobs and that loss of money. I mean, it's a ripple chain reaction when something could have been stopped. Right there.
I mean, that's one of my hopes, because I know I've seen it over and over, and I know that not always. I don't know if it's a standard. I'm not sure all the details that OSHA required, but I do believe that if this were part of any first aid kit, that would go a long way. That would be very beneficial for especially the workers that are working on the field.
I know when we put based on
just food for thought.
Oh yes, I appreciate. I understand 100%, and that's why I was so impressed with when we hooked up on LinkedIn again. And I saw you had a construction hat. I'm like, he's in the construction industry. What's going on there? And I'm like, do you have first aid kits? And you're like, oh my gosh, Elisa, you shot me pictures of your AED. You sent me pictures of your huge first aid kits. And then like all your workers that have all these individual first aid kits. And tell me what you said about safety.
Oh, I mean, we do training. I'm glad that he has that. At my job, our line of work, so we prioritize safety. So we truly believe that if you are right at safety, everything else will fall into place. There's no question about it. Now we do have training session when it comes to safety weekly. No question. Everybody have to sign in their names, make sure that they were present. If you're not present, you're gonna get a warning from me. That's how critical it is. So we do training session weekly. So we give incentive for when workers, if the week goes well, we give incentive for that, just to encourage people to be careful, to be mindful of your surrounding, everything that you do. For instance, we use ladders a lot. Our workers, they know that we do not accept someone to climb on a ladder in your own and then not having somebody else to hold the ladder for you. So we are a big fan of, you need somebody else to hold the ladder for you, and then you can do whatever you're doing. If you're trimming, if you're climbing a tree, whatever it is, you need somebody else to hold the ladder. Those are safety engine that we put in place. And our VADO is at East Coast facilities. We truly believe that for a very long time, people put a lot of emphasis on safety first, safety first, safety first. When I joined the industry, I started the same way, the same mindset, safety first, safety first, safety first. And then we've come down to our senses. We said, okay, if safety first, somebody else can be second. But if that second thing, whatever it is, at one point in time can become first and safety becomes second. Is that make sense?
So, yes, that's sneaky. I like that.
So we said, in that case, just like you breathe, you don't have to do anything whatsoever. It becomes natural. We want safety to become the same thing, the same way. We want safety to become a precondition instead of a priority. It's something that is natural. If I see a battle that is not the way it belongs to, naturally, I'm just going to grab it, take it someplace else. Now, if I see a ladder, if I see someone, that doesn't put the top on the truck, naturally, I know that there's debris in the back of the trucks. Naturally, I have to go and then put it back or ask someone to do it. If I see the trailer is not connected the way it should with the truck, naturally, I'm just going to, hey, you got to check your bolt. You got to check your engine. You got to check your light. Those kind of things. We want these to be natural, not like people see it and then you're like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? And because training is a vital part of it, we do training on a weekly basis so that our guys, there'll be a time that every time when I do training session right now, when I do our muster, we call it muster, in our muster meeting, and I say to our guys, you know what? I feel like I'm being redundant, but it's for a good cause. You guys should know that our VADO, our concern is you come with your two hands, your two legs, your eyes. We want you to go back home the same way.
I'm sure their families appreciate that too.
So you come to work intact, we want you to go back to your house intact. That's why we keep on pressing and telling you, be careful, behave, wear your sunglasses, wear your headset, wear your helmet, wear your, earplugs, those kind of things, because we know at the end of the day, like I said, accident can be prevented.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I know there's no way to quantify it, but with you in that position and having that authority and the power to be able to implement this and carry it through and make sure it's consistent. I was just reading statistics on the types of work injuries that occurred in, I think it was 2023 or maybe the year prior, but ladders was a huge thing. Ground level falls, accidents like that were very common. But I wonder how many lives were saved or how many debilitating injuries were saved as a result of what you've implemented with your workers. Like, you'll never know.
Exactly.
I mean, you can take your rates, like if you had 10 injuries a year and maybe you have one a year. I mean, there's a way to quantify it, but you just never know if you're going to have 10 falls from a ladder or one fall or zero. And I think as resulting is huge. And you need to be the poster child for all of the construction industry in this area. We're going to talk some more.
Our focus essentially is to not have injury at all. That's our focus. And
that's perfect.
And like I said, it's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. In our industry, the green industry, we have a lot of folks that don't know how to read. We have a lot of folks that live in school.
Oh yeah.
We have a lot of folks that it's that they only earn income living. They don't have any other, because they can't do any other thing other than what they are doing right now. Because some of them, they don't know how to use a computer. Some of them, they don't even know how to use a cell phone, other than making phone calls. Those kind of things. And when we think about them, we're like, okay, so we have to be very practical, okay? Yeah. When it comes to dealing with our folks, our frontline workers, we have to show them that we care, and then showing them that, so we know that they will take care of the tools, they will take care of people's property. Because, windows might be broken, and then they're like, I don't care. You know, the car will be broken. They'll be like, I don't care. They'll probably cut a water hose at somebody's house, and they'll be like, I don't care. But once you infuse in them that sense of everything, you should care about it, even if it's not yours. Okay. In return, they'll be like, okay, I'll be more careful. I'll be more careful. I'll be more careful because it's for my own good. I don't tell you to put sunglasses because I hate you. No, I tell you to put sunglasses because I know if you keep working out in the sun, at some point in time, you might have issues in your eyes. You're going to end up having surgery. You know, those kind of things. When I keep repeating that to you, you know, over and over, and then it gets into you, you'll have a better sense of protecting yourself in the company at the end.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think it's a lot like, you know, if I ask you right now, what number do you call to get help if there's an emergency?
Exactly. I don't know.
911.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, 911, that's what you call it. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But we are trained from a little teeny kid to call 911. It's instinctual. Like you don't even have to think about it. You could dial it in the dark. You could, you know, and I think first aid and safety can be the same. It can be instinctual, but it's not going to come in one session. It's not going to come in one class. It's something that's going to be a lifestyle change and a way of thinking and a different, not just necessarily a mindset, but like a behavioral change to implement as part of your life. It'll be a lifelong pursuit. Definitely. Oh my gosh, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. We're going to do this again. I have so much more.
No problem. It's good talking.
It is so good to see you. I have missed you. Oh my gosh, that just took me back.
Last time we chatted, I think probably maybe 2012. That's probably last time we chatted. I'm assuming that was after our marriage. I came back and I called you up.
Yes, exactly.
Hey, Elisa.
Yes, I'm so glad we kept in touch. I think there's no such thing as coincidences, and we met for a reason, no doubt. And you know, like these little kids, you know, in our little orphanage that we went through that one day. And this little girl right here, I can't even remember her little name, but she's a sassy the little short little girl there. I was meeting all these kids and I said, sing me a song. Cause I was told that she loves to sing songs. She even makes up her own songs. And I was surprised how well they spoke English. They teach them English. And the song that she started singing just, again, took me way back. And she's saying, yes, Jesus loves me. I don't know if that's the right title, but yeah, in her cute little tone. And then I started singing and then all the other little girls started singing. And I have that on tape and I'm going to find that. I'm going to put it on this podcast so people can hear that. It was the most beautiful sound coming from situations that are unfathomable. Awesome. But I appreciate your real resiliency. I appreciate your candid and the hardness that you've had to go through and overcome, and how you take that and you make other people around you better and stronger as a result. And you save lives. You're no different than a healthcare worker. I mean, or a first aid responder. You're saving lives every day too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, you keep in touch.
I will. Take care.
All right. Take care. We'll see you. Bye-bye. What an unforgettable conversation with Yvon from Haiti. His resilience, his strength, and his firsthand account of survival after the earthquake serves as a powerful reminder that disaster can strike at any moment. But preparedness can mean the difference between tragedy and survival. Through the right stuff, I've seen firsthand how knowledge, training, and the right tools save lives, whether it's in Haiti, at home, or in the workplace. If there's one lesson we take away today, it's this. We cannot wait for someone else to save us. We must be ready to save ourselves and those around us. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Stay with us as we continue to explore practical ways to take control of our own safety and preparedness at home, at work, and in our communities.